No, awesome. I love it. So I want to start off by saying thanks, Jeffrey, a billion for joining me and being willing to talk about your activation code and to talk about what you know about it and just your journey after you've discovered what your activation code is and a little bit about yourself and what you do also. I want to make sure that anybody who listens to this has an understanding of who you are and how you activate the world. So I guess the first question that I want to ask you is, what do you know about what you activate, and what's your understanding of what you activate in the world? Open ended.
So the two things that you've told me I activate are polarization and a fire under the butt.
Yeah.
So I'll share just a little bit about both of those. I think the easier one for me, the more simple one, is the fire under the butt, which is like, let's get going, right? Like, we got stuff to do. Once we figure this out, like, let's get into motion and make it happen. Early, my first little like baby coach brand before I understood branding was Practical Visionary Coaching. Because a friend of mine at dinner was like, "You're just a practical visionary." And I'm like, "Oh, that's my brand." But there is this real practical side to me where I want to see stuff land in the world and be made real and tangible. So I love the visionary part. I love this, but it's totally unsatisfying to me if it's only this. It's like, well, let's vision and then let's bring a vision into the world. So, that's, I think, one piece is lighting that fire under people's butts to like, let's get going. The other side, you're the activation maverick and expert here. So if there's things you want to fill in after.
I will as we go.
So the other one, the polarization, is the one that I feel like has had even a bit more impact on me. And it put language to something that I had seen in my market, but I never talked about it this way. So polarization is, well, first of all, it's the yin, the yang, the this, the that, the up, the down, the heaven, the earth, the soul, the ego, right? It's that thing in our universe, which are often pulling at odds against each other.
Yeah.
And usually when people come into my world, it's because they're in this place. They're stretched, right? Now, yeah, please help. Because I don't know how to integrate the polarities, right? And oftentimes they're just make it stop. It hurts too much. I'm so stretched. It's so painful. Please make it stop. And everything in my world, everything in my work, the foundation is really about the integration of seeming opposites.
Yeah.
So in hand analysis, like my design has three basic things in it. It's Jupiter, Apollo, and Mars. So Jupiter is the god of gods, right? The leader of leaders. So that's life purpose information for me. The other is Apollo, left Apollo, which is about innovation, creativity, and Apollo is Jupiter's favored son, right?
Yeah.
The lesson, right, is in my Mars zone, which is Mars was the god of war. He's a warrior, and it's all about courage and cowardice, and he's a lover and a fighter, and he was Jupiter's despised son, right? So I've got Jupiter, the favored son, and the despised son. Like, that's the cosmology in my being, written in my hands. So the polarization is everywhere. I don't care what system we look at. Right. If you look at my astrology chart or anything else, there's always this in everything. And that my design is to speak to that in the world, right? To speak to the places where we're unintegrated, in companies, in organizations, and in people, and in countries. So I know that when people come to me, in terms of activation, it's amazing to me that people can be in a lot of pain for a long time and do nothing about it, right? And oftentimes when we're in pain, part of the reason we do nothing about it is because we don't know what to do, right? Or where to go. And when people are around me and they have this thing that's unintegrated, they go, I need to talk to you, right? And they often don't know why they're so compelled, but they are compelled to connect with me. Because they're like, this thing hurts. And they might not be able to articulate that, but I know it's there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like that's my basic understanding of it. I'd love to hear more from you. And I know we'll talk a little bit about like how I've used that understanding, but that's my understanding of the what.
Yeah. So what was about your activation is what makes it like the energetic match too, right? You're not always polarized. I mean, you have felt that before. You recognize that. Absolutely. And you recognize that in others because you've been turning this energy on, like you've been turning that stretch on for people. So where they might be, this is what I think is important for you to know about this, if you haven't already clued in on it, is that if they're like at a stretch and they're polarized, when you come in there, you are going to like, it's going to become so uncomfortable that they need the solution for that. That's your magic. Like, and you become, you know, a vibrational match because you have this life experience of being polarized, being polarizing everybody, seeing that in your world and helping that energy of that polarization kind of integrate your whole life. Your PhD in, you know, my world would be seeing that energy and knowing how to soothe it, right? And knowing how to bring it together. And that's your magic. You do the PhD, you know, your life's PhD work, everything that you do, like everything speaks to that. Yeah. And, but that vibrational matches, like you're the door that feels the safest for them to work through that energy. And it's like a soul calling. I think it's a soul contract. I think of it as a soul contract because I honestly believe it absolutely is a soul contract that we have. The energy that we bring into the world is what we're here to help other people turn on. And unless they turn on those extremes really, so it's that painful, they'll never be willing to integrate, right? I mean, there's some pains, like you're talking about, some pains are just, you know, people live through them for a long time. Some people are very numb to even the fact that they're in pain. They're clueless, right? We're just so clueless. Yeah. But you're there to just pull it, like you're making it just stretchy enough so it hurts. So you may have gotten a lot of
good. Yeah. Come on, baby, make it hurt so good. Yep.
And people are like, oh my gosh, this hurts. Like I can feel this stretch. So they feel that tension, right? Like that gap between comfort and discomfort. They begin to feel it. And that's what makes you so attractive because you're so aligned with your work. You have done your own work. You've integrated a lot. I mean, not to say that you've evolved, but this is your life's work. You're doing what you are here to do, and it just makes sense. So the thing that I find it really interesting is also that process of the fact that you activate the fire under the butt, right? And we have another one that you activate too. We haven't talked about today. We talked about the last time we talked, but that fire under the butt. When people are in that space of like that great tension, they want to do something about it. And you actually kind of probably want them to do something about it too. But the work is that inner work for you, right? And the work that
work so that the outer work can happen. Like for me, most of my tribe, right? My tribe are people with a big calling.
Yes.
They all have this sense of there's something I'm meant to do.
Yeah.
And to a person, they usually say like, it chose me. I didn't choose it. Like you didn't choose to be the activation code queen.
No, never.
Right?
I didn't sign
I
up
didn't
for this.
choose to like be the guy around wounds and marketing. Like none of us chose it. It chose us.
Yeah.
And there is this sense deep inside, like I must steward this. I must be a good steward of this and bring this to the world. That's the call. So that's the call. I need to bring this to the world. And then there's always the myriad of reasons why we don't want to. Right?
Yeah, right.
So that is the fundamental polarization for my people.
For your
All the different reasons they don't want to, and the truth that there's also this calling. And so for me, yeah, the resolution of the polarization is internal. It's about integration.
Yeah.
So that the call can be answered. And that's the external. That's the like, all right, now that we've done this, it's not just to feel good, right? Although I love that.
Right.
It's also so that we can actually do this thing in the world.
Yeah.
So that's how I think of the fire under the butt piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I get in your, this is just an energetic thing. What I get about that fire under the butt within you is some people might feel that the taking action is going to take away that discomfort. So you have to help them with that, like putting the right things, the right foot in front of the other, and take those steps in a way that isn't, that actually helps them integrate, as opposed to help them polarize even more, right? Because you could totally break if you go, you can totally break if you decide that you're going to be, I don't know, a great yoga teacher or yoga guru, and then you go out there and you try to do every single pose that's out there in perfection, right? Like you could break yourself. I'm just saying it could happen.
Yeah.
But without stretching a little bit at a time and growing in it. But the fire under the butt and the polarization, all of that can happen. It doesn't take a long time. It doesn't have to take a long time. It's for everybody, it's going to be a different time.
Yeah.
Different journey. But the fact that the fire is there, it makes people want to take action even before they right. know what they're doing. Like they want to jump off the cliff, basically. Like that's the solution to their problems. Like they're like, just let me jump. Let me do something. This is my experience about you, Jeffrey. I'm just saying, like, let me just, isn't there like a checklist or, like, just give me this so I can do this. And that's not what your work is about. And it shouldn't, because that's not who your tribe, what we really want. And this is what's calling, or what's coming right now, is that you are a part of like that bigger, those of us that are really here to activate the wholeness, the evolution of human beings, of that divine spiritual wake up that's kind of rebellious sometimes, right? Like it is a total spiritual rebels. And there's where the action used to be the thing that would drive the success. Now it's alignment that drives the success.
Yeah.
It is knowing who you are, right? And it's integrating. It's all those things that we do as coaches, helpers, way showers. And that's your magic. So you do it very well. So anyways, I was just thinking about that, like that it could make somebody feel like they want to jump and do something and take a stand before, even take a stand about something that they're not quite. I'm just imagining that a lot of your life may have been with a lot of people just having said things without quite thinking about it, And I don't know. So,
here's what I see. Oftentimes people will want to take action to get out of the polarization.
Yeah.
Right? I want to take action to get out of it. Let me just do. And
yes.
It's a form of escapism.
Yes.
Right? I just want to run away from it, essentially. And I'll move into action to do so.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that crashes and burns in one way, shape, or form. Either the money doesn't happen, or their body breaks down, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then they go, oh crap, all right, I got to actually face the thing I'm avoiding. right? Whatever's in the way is the way.
Yeah.
Face the thing I've been avoiding, do that integration work so that alignment occurs, right? Ooh, I'm now aligned. And then I can move into action. But it's aligned action, like you said. My guidance always says the doing that comes from non-doing. So being in that aligned being state, and then finding the inspired next step to move into action.
Yeah. In my experience and in my world, that kind of action just feels effortless. It's sort of like the action that moves you, as opposed to you moving your body to get into action. It just, that life force just moves through you, and you take an action and you do it, and it's the right time, and the fruits of it are so much more fruity. Well, I know that was one of my experiences with you when I came to you, started working with you a little bit. I had this idea that my tribe was, the luminaries, because I had done all the inner work, and I just knew that, hey, my people want that inner peace and inner satisfaction. You're like, no, your people are mavericks. I was like, I almost choked and I probably did, right? Because it was so what I was trying to get away from. I was trying to get away from that teenage rebellion, the person who just does everything. I'm not in my inner world and not in my home life. I'm not trying to get away, but I'm trying to get away from like other people seeing me that way.
Right.
And the truth is, I can't not be that. Everybody who knows me knows that I'm adventurer. I'm not afraid of much of anything. So the things that I do naturally, which is the maverick, right? The things that I do naturally scare other people to pieces. And that's most of my people. That's what they're going through, right? We step out, we say something, we say we have wisdom to share. And even the fact that we are sharing our wisdom threatens everybody around us. So, yeah. So I love it. I appreciate your, activation of polarity, and to make that stretch so uncomfortable that it's so uncomfortable not to be integrated and have those two things be like, at peace, not polarized, right? They're not so much opposites. They're so together.
Yeah.
And they will continue to grow more and more together over time.
Yep, they will continue to weave together. Ultimately, one of the big polarizations I see for my people is this desire to be liked.
Oh, yeah.
And to belong. And this, how that seems to be at odds with our calling, right? So you're called to be a maverick, to lead mavericks, to speak about mavericks, to call the mavericks out, to build a tribe of mavericks, right? Like, that's your work. And it's really two pieces. It's not just to be a maverick, it's to lead the mavericks, to call them out, to have this tribe of mavericks out and about doing their maverick work in the world, right? And all right, the desire to belong, to be liked, to be welcomed, to be accepted, to be, right, all of that.
Which aren't typically maverick qualities, really, because as a maverick, we're the ones that are on the edge of the tribe, right? We're the ones that are trying to kind of get on the outside of this crazy tribe, because we see all the we see the injustices where they are. So
here's the deal. So the unintegrated maverick is at opposition to others.
Oh.
Through you bad people, I'll show you. It's a adolescent maverick.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Versus a maverick with wisdom, right? A mature maverick.
Yeah.
Because the mature maverick isn't fighting against anything. It's moving towards and paving new paths that haven't been paved before, and disregarding rules that don't apply to create something new. But it's not in opposition.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, and there is a human need to belong. It's a basic human need.
Oh, Absolutely.
right? So you can have an archetypal energy moving through you of being the maverick and still have a human need to belong. And
Mm.
how even those two things on paper are at odds. Right?
Yeah, on paper, but because I mean, this has taken a while for me to get this Maverick piece, and we talked about that before I started recording. But the the work that I do, the more I talk about what it means to be a Maverick and what is at that, the immature stage of being a Maverick, it just naturally matures that energy. It's sort of like it marinates and it grows up. And I've done a lot of work kind of separating myself from that again. So I am happy to find that over the past year that there are people who are raising their hands and saying, I'm a Maverick, and
Mhm.
really resonating with the term because the word itself, and this is kind of off topic for you, but really on topic for the work that you've done with me. So I appreciate that. But the word itself is such a polarizing word because it comes with it. And we're talking about Maverick leadership, right? And it's, oh my gosh, that's a very masculine, right? Masculine Maverick leadership. And it is pretty much what most people are wanting not to be right now. Like they don't want to be that masculine male, my way or the highway, which is totally not what Maverick leadership is about. But the word invokes that. So it's invoking that polarization of, the masculine leadership that's not working and moving into this Maverick leadership where we can be integrated
Mhm.
and say, yes,
Yeah.
I'm going to lead with all this. Anyway, so thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
Yeah. So the other question I wanted to ask you was, like in your childhood, because we talked a lot about what you're doing now, but like as you were little, do you remember anything or some experiences in your life where you can say, oh yeah, I could see that now, and I could also see that happened when I was little, like you activating polarity or that fire under your butt?
I can see more of my own polarity. I don't know. I'm sure I activated it around me,
Yeah.
but really what I see is just my own like sea of polarity that I swam in.
Okay.
Uh, you know, when I was a kid, I was raised as a Dutch Calvinist, but then in second grade, we moved to like total evangelical, you know, holy rollers, getting slain in the spirit at right, dancing
Running
the
down the hall,
yeah,
run down the aisles,
yeah, speaking in
halls.
tongues, and it was a whole, and it's a form of religion, at least the one I was in, based on fear, which
Yeah.
is if I'm not saved, I'm going to burn in hell for all of eternity, right? So it's
Right.
all based really on this like Deuteronomy, end times, are you saved or not, mythology. Um, and And the way to be saved was to accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal savior. But the only picture I had for a God was a dude with a beard in a sky, right? And I was down here and he was up there, and like, I didn't know how to connect with that.
Yeah.
So, every single service, we went to church twice on Sundays and every Wednesday.
Yeah.
Every single service, there's an altar call where they invite you up to the front to get saved. Uh, and they start every single one. If you don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you leave this room today and get hit by a car that you're going to heaven, I just want you to raise your hand.
And you're thinking, hit by a car. Oh my
Right.
gosh.
And I'm like, I don't know beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like,
Right.
I can't say that. But the worst people were the ones that got saved and then backslid. They were called backsliders. You
Oh
didn't
yeah.
want to be one of those because they were really judged. Like, who is a backslider? Right? They
Oh,
went back to worldly ways. So, like this is the sea I swam in. Um, I do remember this, Dawn. I remember like being at church or being at wherever with, say, my mom's friends or whatever. And you know how you'll ask kids, like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, a fireman, like whatever. They wouldn't do that with me. They would be like, I wonder what you're going to be when you grow up. They'd look at me with this, like, huh, yeah, you're a different kid. You know, because I was always saying stuff you weren't supposed to say.
Oh, right.
You know, I remember after my mom got her tubes tied, I think I was 7. And I was standing around with some ladies and her at church after church. And I just looked up at them and I'm like, oh, did you get your tubes tied too? You look pretty old. Um, like, I thought it was just something that ladies did when they got older. I didn't know what it meant, you know, and these looks of scorn. So, you know, and then when I was 13, I realized I was gay.
Yeah.
So that's a whole, like, you know, super conservative, homogeneous, religious society, community. I'm gay. Then I became a total punk rocker and went the other way. Shaved half my head, wore all black, you know, and the kids at my private parochial school did not know what to do with me.
Right.
So, you know, there's always been a bit of a black sheepness to me. So the desire to belong, but also the fuck you around it, right? And moving forward. So there, like that's been there all along. You know, and I had a lot of disdain for the status quo when I was younger. So yeah, so I don't know that I can say like I remember activating other people's polarity. It more feels like I was in my polarity.
Yeah, well,
There's a good chance that I was activating it, but I was just so in my own experience that I wasn't seeing it.
yeah, no, that's good because I think for me, my experience, and I'll just share this with you. One of the experiences I remembered from my childhood, which made sense to me after I realized that I activate abundance, right? People would always ask me for money. Like I was the bank. Whether I had money or not, they were asking me for money.
Uh-huh.
And it was just this, they just assumed that I had it. And I did, I usually did. And we lived in I babysat, I got allowance. So I'm sure all those things, the people that I went to middle school were experiencing. So I had money.
Mm-hmm.
But that was one of the things that I remember, like that kind of gave me a clue of okay, there was something in that energy field that was happening even when I was even younger. Even my dad, like my dad would borrow money from me when I was. He would give me allowance, borrow money, and then pay me interest, right? Because he was teaching me how to do the bank, and now we do that with my kids.
Love it.
But it was just it was just an experience that led me to kind of help integrate those like younger parts of me that said, oh yeah, like yeah, that happened to me. So or other people were doing something to me, or were reacting to me in a way.
Here's what I'll say. I did have the experience of like people treated me differently than my peers oftentimes. I remember in choir, I was in this like a really great choir that you had to audition to and blah, 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 right? And I would pace in the back of the room while we were rehearsing. And I remember one day, this other kid got up and went to the back of the room and the teacher was like, hey, sit down. And he was like, but you let Jeffrey walk in the back of the room. He's like, yeah, he needs to, you don't, sit down. Right? And the teacher like recognized like my body needed to move.
Right.
Or I waited tables at this really nice restaurant my senior year of high school. And there was another kid who was a senior who was a busser and asked the manager like, hey, I want to be a waiter. He's like, you can't be a waiter. He's like, because you're in high school or something, right? And he's like, but Jeffrey is. And he's like, yeah, that's him. Um,
Totally different.
you know, like, and like this has happened right in high school, in college, when I would sing, I would often get the solos and these like gospel spiritual solos. And there was this like, you're a white boy from the Midwest. Where did that come from? Right? Like I didn't grow up in the black church or anything like that. So it was always just like, there's something different happening over there. That people would recognize and either encourage or allow.
Yeah. So what's coming to me about that one is it's probably more about that third activation that we were
Oh,
talking
that you haven't mentioned yet.
that I haven't mentioned yet.
Okay.
Really the, you know, the bigger vision, like a really big, or not vision, purpose. It's a really the big purpose. So my guess is people could feel or resonate a bigger purpose, right? In having you be there, or having you, you know, wait the tables, or having, so they could feel it. They were turned on to the bigger purpose, and they were able to say, I could see more than what's just going on here when Jeffrey's around. Now, if it would have been somebody like the other people, right, they might not be activating the bigger purpose. So even if they had a bigger purpose, they might not have been able to see it. So that's just what I'm feeling about that. And I know that this bigger purpose thing, it is an expansive, they're all very expansive energies, right? When you activate something, the more you lean into it, the more you have an expansive understanding of what that actually means, right? Yeah. It just grows. So bigger purpose for a choir teacher, it, you know, when you were younger, he could have been somehow tuned into the bigger purpose of you singing later on, or the bigger purpose of you being in front of audiences and this was your process, or whatever. He doesn't have to have any conscious understanding of it. It's just the energetic feeling of there's a bigger reason or a bigger purpose.
Yeah.
And so that's the next one that I feel like you're really stepping into a lot. And that people are asking for this for you. I mean, this is a part of your, you know, higher calling, the work that you're doing, but there's a bigger shift when you step into that. A huge, and it's almost like an earthquake size shift is what's coming. It's like, it's kind of like rocks, you know, that shakes the earth a little bit. So yeah. And I'm sure, and I know you've probably felt that a lot of your life also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those kids. I would say pretty much everybody that I serve, if I ask this question, they'll raise their hand to this. You know, I'll ask my audience, like, how many of you have kind of always known somewhere inside, like, I've got something big to do in this world?
Yeah.
Right? Hands go up. I've always known that. I've not often known what it is or how to articulate it. But if I look back, like, there is this thing that people have always done with me of like, there's something different with you. And like, there would be doors opened to allow me to like express a bigger purpose, right?
Yeah.
So whether it was a, you know, a 5-year-old with the kids going like, I wonder what you're going to be when you grow up. Like, you're not going to do the things that everybody else has done.
Yeah.
And like, even as a young kid, they would see that, you know, and then the opportunities I've been given throughout my life in every career. When I was at Microsoft, you know, I was part of getting the web conferencing industry off the ground.
Yeah.
And develop the training systems for people to understand how to use the technology. And I would, for large projects, be the host of these big web conferences. So like, and whenever they were like really different ones, like really outside of the box, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's Jeffrey's project, right? So like, I remember, gosh, this was probably 2003. they sent me to New York, to the Waldorf Astoria, to be the guy that ran the World Economic Forum training program.
That's cool.
With, and like Jacques Chirac's 5 feet from me, he was president of France at the time, Peter
Yeah.
Jennings in the room, Ariel Sharon's on the web conference in Israel. And I'm the guy running the thing, from our side. I'm obviously not running the World Economic Forum side, but it's just like they didn't tap any of my colleagues for anything like that. It was always me, and I would always produce. It was like I'd get the job done, but I like the things that are like difficult or creative or have to find a different solution, or like that's what turns me on. But I will say they recognized that.
So, yeah.
Around my tribe, here's what I'm seeing. The people that are showing up in my world today have big work, right? There's a woman in my program right now, and it's not like the obvious stuff. Like there's a woman who is one of the most recognized dental hygienists in our country.
That's awesome.
She speaks to hygienists around the country and trains them and whatnot. But she has this calling to bring better dental hygiene to senior care facilities around the country.
Ew,
because elders are dying from their teeth, right?
Yeah.
And it's really like, oh, she spent her world in the hygienist world, her life in the hygienist world. Now she needs to go and really call these owners and managers of senior care facilities forward to prioritize dental hygiene and bring hygienists into these care facilities. I have another gal who was a lawyer and a judge, and has this really different way of approaching management that she's meant to bring to the world, and particularly to municipalities and to companies that have unions in them. And there's a lot of victimizer energy, and that's the polarization there. So, but these are like, and I could go on, but each one of them, like, it's not a small vision for any of them.
Right.
They're up to the task. They're like, all right, I'm in, let's go. And there is polarization to work out and the resistance to it and that inner journey. But here's what I notice about them. And this is different than people that are just interested in personal development.
Right.
They are in first, right? They're committed first. I'm a yes. I'm putting a stake in the ground for this. And I'll deal with whatever comes up in me or around me as I move towards what I'm committed to. And what I see with a lot of people that are more like, I just want to work on myself, even though maybe I was saying I'm running a business, is I want to do all this inner work so that I feel comfy saying yes.
Oh, that's really
Right?
powerful.
I want to do all this inner work so that I feel safe and I feel integrated and it feels okay. And then I'll say yes. So like I need to get rid of my fear in order to give my yes. Right? And it's like, no, backwards.
Right. And so what this is what I think is kind of brilliant about just watching your journey within your activation codes and who you're attracting, and this bigger vision, like walking and stepping into that bigger, it's not a bigger vision. It is a bigger purpose. I just want to keep making that very clear. The vision is totally a different thing. This is a bigger purpose. And when you are saying, well, you're totally ready for that, you're saying yes to it, the people that are coming into your world now, because you're saying, yeah, this is what I'm doing, not only are you attracting them, but they've crossed a line. Yeah. Right? That line that is, and they are innately already liberated. That's what's coming. They know their own power, right? They know their own power. They know that they have a voice. And they doesn't mean that they don't still struggle with or working that out or whatever, but they have, they have a sense of their own sovereignty. That's what I'm
Yes.
getting. So
Yeah.
the people who you have been attracting up until whenever that shift has been for you, and I'm sure that there's going to be trickles of people still coming around, but they absolutely know that they're sovereign, that they are liberated, that they can, that they've, that there's yes, maybe still work to do on themselves, but they're willing to do all that work because
In service to.
in service to the bigger purpose, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And all of them go, all right, I don't know how to do this bigger purpose, right?
right.
I know I need help. And that's part of why they hire me, right?
Mhm.
I know I need help. But it's not, but you're right. They've already committed to it. They already know that they can do it and will do it.
Yeah.
They're just getting the resources they need on the way to actually do it.
Yeah.
And saying yes to what's right. But you're right, that sovereignty thing, so all of my work, and I didn't really talk about my work yet, but all of my work under the surface, right? On the surface, it might look like marketing or leadership development, but under the surface, it's about a journey towards our sovereignty.
Yes.
What I say about our wounds is that all wounds are an invitation to sovereignty. Because what a wound is at its essence is a disconnection from ourselves.
Yeah.
So the journey back home on that hero's journey is a journey back towards ourselves where we are sovereign.
Yeah.
And that piece, when I'm in that sovereignty, there's a level of assurance and a foundation of peace from which action could be taken, even if it gets rattled and rocked and rolled and whatnot, but like feet on the ground.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. And the piece about power that's coming up, because you mentioned it earlier, and I'm going to mention it again, is that this group of people that are, saying yes to their bigger purpose, they have a sense of their power and they want to, you've talked about this before, they want to wield it with their heart, right? They want to wield it with
Grace.
integrity and with grace. Grace is a really great word. The other word is integration, integrity, right? Those two words are so, together, but that's what they're asking. And since you are a vibrational match to that, that's why it makes them so, yes, I want Jeffrey, because there are so many people out there who are talking about, I can help you with your bigger purpose. And I mean, I see them all the time. Like they're still talking heads, right? Like just like,
Very nice.
Some of my favorite talking heads have been saying the same things over and over, and they've not deviated from saying the same things over and over and over again for 50 years.
Right.
And it's great, and it had a purpose and a time, but there is still, we're evolving, right? There's got to be an expansion of our work. And I'm feeling celebratory about your expansion of your work and where it's going. So,
well, let's take these last few minutes and talk about the expansion of your work and where it's going.
Ooh, okay. You always want me to free flow on that, the expansion of my work? Or
well, like what's being called forth briefly for you? Like, where are you going? And I want to say just a little bit about like my experience of these activation codes.
Oh yeah.
As it relates to who you're serving.
Yeah, good. Where am I going? I'm going in the direction of getting this information out to more people. Meaning I want to write, I'm in the process of writing my book, which kind of makes me hot. I'm sitting here like sweating when I even say it. But I thought all those pieces that I was going to write before were like separate books. Like, no, it's all the same book, but it's under now the title, Activate Millions. And like I shared with you before, it's not about, the dollars, and it's not even about all the people. It is about the people. It's impacting like that ripple effect. When you are activated, I know when you're activated, that the people around you get activated and turned on. And that awareness and that consciousness gets me excited, because to me, it's all like we're coming together, we're seeing each other's divinity. If I can look at you, Jeffrey, and I can say, oh, he is integrated, he's living his purpose, he's, he's doing the work he's meant to do, whether messy or not messy, or eloquently and gracefully, that makes me excited. And I want more people to know that it's our energy that matters first. And, it goes together with everybody else's work, all of our work, and it's not separate. And then the self-appreciation piece that we haven't talked about on this, on our webinar today, but that is huge. And it's going to be a part of my book, because it's all, it's all together. They're not separate. So
yeah.
Cool.
Well, here's what I want to say about the activation code stuff. So, I do a fair amount of speaking and marketing and messaging and whatnot. Like I share a fair amount.
Yeah.
And what I notice is that people respond most when I'm tapped into one of my activation codes, intentionally plucking that string in an email, for example, is like, I can watch the open rates, right?
Yeah.
So when I consciously pluck a string, like just this morning, I was talking to my business manager, people are motivated by both desperation and aspiration.
Yeah.
What they want to move away from and what they want to move towards. So I said, I just said this morning, I said, we're in a place where we need to start moving more clearly into aspirational language in our copy, right? Like, I can speak to the pain and the difficulty and the blah, 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 and that's fine and that's good. But where I feel like we're going and what the people are wanting and needing from me at this point is to remind them that they're superheroes. Right?
Okay.
Even if they've forgotten their cape or put it in a drawer, don't know where it is.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to remind them of their power, of their potential, of the bigger purpose, why you're really here, and that there is a bigger purpose in your life right now, and you can do it, right? To activate that memory and the fire under the butt to like, all right, let's go. A lot of the polarization stuff is the pain, but like you said, the sovereignty piece, where a lot more and more of my people are already found that sovereignty. Like, I feel like I have to pluck that string a little less than I've done traditionally, and pluck the string or sing the song of that bigger potential, that bigger purpose. I was just saying that this morning. And my experience is when I tap into that and I utilize that, like from this conversation, I'm thinking about a sales page that I'm going to go edit. Right. And really look at it. Like, are those three codes clear in the copy? Am I speaking to them? Am I calling them out? Because my experience is when I do that, people respond. They're like, yep. Yeah. Because ultimately they're like, yeah, that's what I need to come to you for. That makes sense. That's aligned, right? Like, oh yeah, I do come to you for that. And it's funny because even something like you said, like a bigger purpose, it's not a new conversation.
No, it's not.
Right? It just happens to be true.
Right.
Right. That it is an activation, that it is something that can help people step into.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this dental hygienist. She came to me and she had this whole thing where she was training these hygienists to sell these services to the caregivers of the seniors, like the adult children of the seniors, onesie twosie, right? And I'm like, that's not going to do the job. You got a way bigger purpose than that. You're meant to bring this, you're meant to change the senior care approach to dental care. That's your job. You need to be on the stages of these national associations of people that own senior care facilities. We need to paint the picture about, I was like, do you know what it costs them not to? She's like, but they always complain about the cost. I'm like, do you know what it costs them not to have this? She goes, actually, I have all that data. So is that in your message? No, right? So it's like, all right, we need to speak in the right language to the right audience at scale.
Right.
And this onesie twosie stuff, not anymore, because that is not the bigger purpose. So it's like it's rearranging her whole business model and her whole sense of what's possible by reconnecting her to what that bigger purpose really is.
Yes.
And that's somebody that went from not knowing me from Adam, right? A referral from another client to a single conversation and a multi-$1,000 purchase with me for that support.
Wow.
And, so that's the kind of thing when I see people in their activation code and they're talking from the activation code, it simply lands as true.
Yes.
That's it, right? So the know, like, trust factor, can we believe them and rely on them? That happens really quickly, because there's not you're a talking head and you're talking about this stuff, but it doesn't like those clothes don't wear well on you.
Because you're not talking in this specific code that you are actually coded to, like, specifically have sold contracts with people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that's the contract that I came here to fulfill, right? That's the one that I need in order to get where I'm going. That's the one. Yeah.
The other thing I'll say, particularly for you and the Mavericks, is, and we've talked about this when we did some work together, that your Mavericks often feel hemmed in by laying claim to a particular brand or a particular thing, and they'll like do it for a bit, and then they'll start to feel like the freedom is sucked out of them, and they'll bounce, right?
Yeah. Right.
But my experience is when you build a business around your activation code, it feels expansive.
Yeah.
Right? It feels like freedom. It doesn't feel like you're pinned in.
Yes.
Because there's a wellspring of resource that you can keep mining inside of that activation code.
Yeah.
And I think the reason your Mavericks often bounce from certain businesses or opportunities is because it's not rooted in something that is an everlasting wellspring. That's why it's like, oh, it's run dry, I'm out. Oh, it's run dry, I'm out. Right? But when they're in this activation code, there is no limit to what's possible for them. And that's where the true freedom actually lies.
Yes. Thank you for that. Because that's exactly, yes. Yeah. I feel that, I get it. And I am loving that you put that in words. And I was kind of taking notes at the same time. Of course, we got it recorded, but I'm like, no, I need also to write this down. Yeah. But that is so true. Oh, and thanks for sharing your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to share about your experience with the activation codes? I wanted to ask you really quick. I mean, because you have a unique experience that I don't know that everybody else has. One of your team members knows what she activates as well. Yep. And how that changed.
Well, it's not just her. It's so you were in a group that I led, right? In travel marketing. And on one of the calls, you were just messaging, oh, their activation code is this, but their activation code is this. And it dropped something in, because I work with their brand and their positioning and their message, and I look at how our core wounds have shaped and developed us to know who we're meant to serve and what we're meant to do. But there was something about just dropping the activation code in that made sense of the brand and the position, made sense of the work, and made sense of their role. Here's what it did. It made sense of their role in that work. The work felt right, but what's their role in the work?
Yeah.
Right? And it made sense of, oh, this is what I'm meant to be doing inside of that work and inside of that brand. So it just dropped it in. And I would say the same thing for my business manager, when she really got, oh, that's the activation code. Here's the thing about the activation code I'll say as well, is I think I notice for myself and with her, when we remember it and we're living from it, things get easy. Yeah. And then we forget it and aren't utilizing that activation. It kind of grinds to a halt, like it gets hard. So that's what I'd say there.
Yeah. And it is a kind of remembering, right? Hearing it, you're like, of course I activate that. Like, of course I activate that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think she knew that as well. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. I so appreciate you, and good luck on all your next endeavors.
Absolutely. Thank you, my dear. I really appreciate you and love you and love this work. So keep on going.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Bye.